If you get into business, and a lot of people say, well, I want to get into business so I have more free time. It's the dumbest thing. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no such thing,
that's crazy.
right? Unless you have generational wealth or big investors that are not smart. You can't start a business for more free time. Free time doesn't come until way later.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.
All righty. Welcome back to another episode of the Business After Hours podcast here with my co-host Jared and our guest Alan. How are you gentlemen doing this afternoon? Wow.
Living the dream.
As Jared said, living the dream, I would say I've tried to adopt this philosophy of chasing the dream and living the dream, I think are actually one and the same.
Okay.
Assuming that it's in alignment with, your passion and your purpose.
With your dream.
And
correct.
so it's some days it feels like a nightmare, but it's today's a dream.
Well, how's your new year so far, Alan?
So we're 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed, but in the best way. Two ways a business goes out of business is one, they grow too slow, two, they grow too fast. Lately, it's been a little bit of the second one, but I'm grateful for it because I remember in the beginning when it was crickets. So my schedule's very full, but I'm also extremely grateful because in the beginning, no one really cared, right?
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
How was 2024 for you?
We grew by 11%, which is definitely not as much as we had hoped. And we have a podcast production company. We work with 66 podcasters, 28 business owners right now. And the demand is definitely increasing. But after COVID, when I look at the numbers, 2017 all the way to 2024, it was 500% growth, 2017 to 2018, which we weren't starting from a big number. So that was, and then it was 160, 150. Then it was 64%. Then it was 104%. So we've been doubling our business year over year for like those 5 years.
Awesome.
Thank you. But the last 2 years, 18% and 11%. Now, granted, the numbers are bigger now, so it's harder to grow. Obviously, it's harder to double when the numbers are bigger. But it's very clear post-COVID. I mean, the amount of podcasters went from 2 million to 5 million, and then that contracted a ton. So we're doing very well for sure, and I'm grateful. We got a 17-person team now and 3 podcasts within the company. But yeah, I would say 2024 was a grind year. And if you can survive the tough times in business, you guys know this, then when things open back up, I mean, you're really ready to catch the fish that are jumping in the boat. But I think in hindsight, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, the beginning of 2023, I mean, fish were jumping in the boat in this space, self-improvement, podcasting, personal growth, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all this stuff, right? So it's very clear in hindsight that we expanded a little too quickly.
What would you say has been the reason for the rise in podcasting?
Just everyone home for COVID. I think everybody was at home and at lockdown, and I think a lot of people were reevaluating their life. I think they were reevaluating their careers. And I think podcasting is a very unique and, I don't want to say easy, but easy way to get your voice out there and to start building your own thing. It's a lot harder than I think people realize. And if you're not playing the long game and in it for the right reasons, it's definitely not. But absolutely. I think it was very enticing for a lot of people who were sort of recontemplating their careers when they were stuck at home.
Sure.
That's fair. So do you focus more on like podcasters or getting audience for your podcast?
It started out with audience for our podcast. And so the beginning, our sort of 3 phases coming up on year 8, the beginning was character over everything, work on ourselves, and help our listeners work on themselves too. It was self-improvement podcast.
Okay.
It used to be called the Hyperconscious Podcast, change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And then we rebranded to Next Level University. And that's when we started our podcast production company. And so now we produce 54 podcasts, including 3 of my own. But at first it was level up yourself. Now it's sort of level up yourself, level up your podcast, level up your business. And so Kevin, my business partner, he focused on podcast coaching and I focused on business coaching.
Okay.
But we wanted to lead by example. So we needed to grow our own show and our own business first before we started teaching other people sort of how to do that. So we have Next Level University, which is Level Up Yourself. He has Podcast Growth University, which is Level Up Your Podcast. And then I'm starting this year Business Growth University, which is how to grow and scale your own business, personal branding, social media, your core value, how to build and generate actual revenue. So we call them listeners, longers, and business owners. So listeners learn from us. Longers want to build their own podcasts in their own communities. And then business owners need to generate revenue. And that's sort of where I come in.
Okay. And what, somebody just starting out or wanting to get started, first of all, what would be some advice to you for somebody that wants to start podcasting?
Yeah. The first thing is we always say wrong time perspective, wrong approach, wrong strategy. A lot of people go into podcasting thinking, and us too, 8 years ago, we thought, okay, some of the big podcasts, Joe Rogan at the time, all that stuff, and, Tony Robbins, blah, blah, blah. The podcast space is kind of like the Ed Milet's, Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, Lewis Howes. Up here, they make a lot of money.
Right.
And then there's everyone else. And there's very little in between. And if you're starting a podcast to make money, you're screwed. Out of the gate, it needs to be about the listener, and it needs to be built on a core value that you're obsessed with. So for us, we are obsessed with self-improvement, and if we weren't, there's no way we would do 2,000 episodes about it. Holistic self-improvement, level up your life, love, health, and wealth is our sort of thing. But it started out with deep conversations about personal development, personal growth, and self-improvement. And we were in it for the listener, and both of us were coming off six-figure careers where we didn't really need to generate revenue right away. And so hopefully anyone who wants to start a podcast has, I call it the two trains. You need one train that's short-term profitability that pays the bills and keeps the lights on. And
Right.
the podcast is more of the long-term brand building, sort of audience building train. But this one's not going to make any money for the first many years. And you got to really plan on that. And if you can do that, they eventually the long-term train ends up making more money than the short-term train. And then eventually, you build a business within your actual podcast and your brand.
Sure.
And I think that anyone who starts a podcast, if you go into it for any short-term gain, you're just screwed because you're going to be slapped in the face very quickly with how hard it is to build an audience in a world where there's 5 million other podcasts, right?
Why is it so hard to build an audience?
I think just there's only so many fish in the ocean and there's so many people fishing. I always use the metaphor of Forrest Gump where, there's all the shrimping boats and then there's a storm and all the other shrimping boats, crashed, and then they start crushing it because there's no other shrimping boats. It's kind of like that, particularly post-COVID. So back in the Joe Rogan day, 2009 is when he started, and you can look at his very first episode. It's atrocious. But he just started at the beginning when no one was really doing it. YouTube and
Right.
podcasting was fairly new, and now it's a very saturated thing that most people are doing. However, the good thing about that is very few people are able to stick around. And so everything, as you know, is expansion, refocus, expansion, refocus. It's expansion and contraction, the economy, business, all the stuff. And so if you can stick around long term, staying power, and be consistent, you will develop an audience because people can learn that they can trust that you're going to be around.
Sure.
And once they can trust that you're consistent, they'll come and go. We've had so many listeners that have come and gone, but we're still around. We're still here. We're still doing it. And they come back. And a lot of other podcasters don't. I think it's like 80% of podcasters are gone within the first 21 episodes or something like that. It's not a lot of people can stick around. And if you can stick around and be consistent and improve your content and your production quality, your audio quality, video quality, like you guys know, when I first came in, I asked, hey, how's my audio? How's my video? That stuff, the packaging matters just as much as the product. And in the beginning, we had a terrible backdrop, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. But now we work with so many podcasters. Production value needs to be a big focal point because, being great at speaking is really important, but no one's going to take you seriously if you don't have the equipment that shows investment.
What are your thoughts on doing like an online setup like we're doing right now versus, doing an in-person sit down like Joe Rogan does? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I appreciate these questions. So we had a studio So my our first studio, Kevin and I, my business partner, he and I's first studio was my sister's old bedroom. Then the next was my mother's basement. It was like a finished basement, but that was pretty atrocious as well. And then we got our own studio. So COVID happened and we actually ended up doing a virtual tour and we got our own studio. It was actually really nice and we decked it out. I mean, we had 2 nice chairs and it was a really good setup. We were in person and we would travel to the studio. Every Monday would be recording day and we do an episode every day. So it would be 7 days of each week we'd batch 7 episodes. And these aren't small episodes. They're half hour on average each. And we had a production company, which luckily we did because we obviously can't do all that ourselves, right? But ultimately, the in-person gave us a huge bump. Like if you were to look at the listens, particularly on YouTube, the in-person and the clips that come from that were very good, but the commute was killing us. He was commuting an hour every Monday, and then sometimes something would happen with the audio. We'd have to do like last-minute episodes so we wouldn't miss a day because that was our thing. Consistent quality content was like our number one thing. And the commute was killing us. And when COVID happened and the shutdown happened, it was like, you know what? Let's can this. Let's go online. StreamYard's capabilities came way up. I'm actually grateful you guys are using StreamYard. I think it's the best. It's also the most expensive. I mean, they just bumped the prices way
It's
up.
also most affordable too.
You
At
think
the
it's
same time,
affordable?
because they have a free version that you don't have to pay for.
Oh, right.
So for somebody that's just getting started, I think that benefits them because they're not necessarily having to worry about throwing a bunch of money, at a platform or that
Fair.
to get started.
The quality of the audio and the video are the best. From what we've seen, there's Riverside. There's all these different ones. Zoom in particular, I think the audio quality is garbage, although there's ways to make it better. We pay a lot for StreamYard. Like I think we pay like almost $1,000 a year or something crazy. But in the beginning, it probably was free, but they've come up a lot. To answer your original question, virtual versus in person gives more credibility, but there's so much travel expenses. Right? You get a guest, they have to fly across the country for an interview. I'm not saying not to do that. It's a pro and con. There's a pro and con to everything. We chose to go fully virtual. I work fully from home. I coach fully from home. So does Kev. And we've grown and scaled our business online. And we have a fully virtual team, 17-person team. And, some all over the world, Philippines, all that stuff. I want to run a fully virtual business. And I think the 21st century is the first time in history you can actually do that, which I think is really cool. However,
Right.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that the in-person studio built a level of credibility and presence that we cannot fully replicate. But if you look at our YouTube, we're facing each other. So as a side profile, Kevin and I are facing each other as if we're having a conversation. So we're trying to replicate that the best we can, but my backdrop's different than his. And so it's obviously not the same room, but it looks like it kind of is, and it's more zoomed in. But ultimately, I think virtual is the best for efficiency and effectiveness. I think in-person is the best for credibility.
Now, when you say you look at each other, do you also have a guest? Like, how does that look with the guests?
So we did have guests. We interviewed hundreds of people actually, and as we rebranded to Next Level University, so it used to be the Hyperconscious podcast, change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live, and we would interview people, Olympic athletes, all this stuff. And eventually we became Next Level University, which was level up your life, love, health, and wealth. It was holistic self-improvement. It still is. Holistic self-improvement is kind of our thing. We don't want to be wealthy but not healthy. We don't want to be healthy but not have enough money. We don't want to be healthy and wealthy but not in love. And so that's sort of our thing. And this was an evolutionary process, obviously, over the last 8 years. But one of the things that we found that was really challenging is we would interview guests and they would talk, we'd interview them about business, and then they'd start talking about health. And then we'd get to the end of the interview and Kevin and I would be like, dude, we can't air that. That person doesn't know anything about fitness. But they would just kind of go off. And so we eventually were like, you know what? We're done with guests. We're going to do 1% improvement in your pocket every single day from anywhere on the planet, completely free. Kevin and I are going to have deep conversations about the 1% improvements that we're going through, lead by example, not have all the answers, but talk about this stuff organically. And then we're going to build a business around that. And then he has Podcast Growth University and I have Business Growth University, and we're both going to have guests on those shows. But we used to interview and then we stopped, that kind of thing.
Is it a good strategy for a business to also have a podcast?
Definitely. Yeah.
And why?
I think, and again, it depends, of course.
Sure.
But I can't imagine a business nowadays that wouldn't benefit if they did it right. But that's when I say right, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Right.
And again, I've made every mistake under the sun. I've been only podcast. So mentoring for 10 years, podcasting for 8. The first 2 years I call it mentoring because I wasn't getting paid. And then coaching for the last 8. A lot of my clients are podcasters. So some business owners need a podcast. Some podcasters need to build a business.
Right.
Right. And
Gotcha.
so that's the space I've played in for 8 years. And I'm talking every single day. Like I haven't taken a full day off in 10 years. People think I'm nuts. It is what it is. I'm just all in. But the point that I'm making is I think every business would benefit from a podcast if they get the right messaging, if they do it right. And when I say do it right, that's a loaded thing because do it right means, 21 things you have to do well.
Right.
And so my short answer is yes, everyone would benefit, but without the right guidance, it probably won't be a net win for quite some time.
So just in case you might be scaring some people with the word production team and us do the production, can you kind of go into detail of what goes into like a professional podcast like yourself of what a production looks like so that like somebody starting out might be like, oh crap, I don't have money or people, anything for this pod or for this production crew. And so maybe I shouldn't do it.
100%. Yeah. I tend to scare people off. I'm grateful you mentioned that. The reason why that is because starting a podcast is easy. Growing and scaling a podcast that generates revenue is unreasonably difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for someone who's just starting out, like us in the beginning, you need a microphone, you need, Audacity, which is free. You need a software that works, Audacity or Audition. Audition's not free, but Audacity is. And you need to learn enough, Google it, like to where you can jump on the microphone and speak articulately about a passion of yours.
Okay.
And we say passion into purpose into profit. So your passion is what you're leading by example in your own life. So for me, I started out as a fitness model, fitness competitor, fitness coach. So fitness was my passion. So Kevin and I, we were bodybuilders. We would talk about fitness on the show all the time. And this is back before we knew what the hell we were doing. And so our passion is fitness, which is what we're leading by example in. We were both in great shape, unfortunately way better than we are now. And purpose is helping people. So passion is you do it yourself, lead by example. Purpose is share it on the microphone to try to help other people with it. And then profit is sell products and services that help people even more, but for money. And so the goal of business is to help people, depending on the type of business. Unfortunately, there's some businesses that are not to help people.
Correct.
Like a cigarette company is an example that doesn't really help people, but whatever. Okay, so, but the
Health
ultimate point of
insurance.
this is for anyone starting out, you're climbing Mount Everest and you need to know that, but you don't have to worry about the top of the mountain yet. You just have to start getting started, and then eventually you'll build demand. And when the demand is big enough to where you can't do it all yourself, you then can delegate and hire, and you can get freelancers for good money because the minimum wage in other countries is extremely low. And we pay above minimum wage in every instance, but it's much lower in other countries. So it depends on where they're from. And there's a lot of people willing to work really hard for very little, because their cost of living is so damn low.
Right.
I mean, my cost of living in Massachusetts is insanity. It's like the 4th worst on the planet.
I was going to say, it's pretty bad there.
Yeah, it's not great. It's atrocious, to be completely honest. But I'm also have great infrastructure, blah, blah, blah. That said, for anyone out there who I'm scaring away right now, you can start small like we did and just kind of figure it out as you go, and then just make sure that you're humble enough to keep learning and asking the right questions, and find someone in your corner who has done it before that wants to see you win and isn't trying to like take advantage of you. Like if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would say you need to be way more careful with who you allow to pour into your life and who you allow into your sort of circle. Because in hindsight, there was a lot of not only bad advice, but also just, I was very naive to, buy this course, and a lot of that stuff is horseshit, to be honest. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for like newcomers and growing their audience and developing without having to spend money on marketing or anything like that?
Yeah, well, so I have this flywheel, And the flywheel concept, there's a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, and he talks about how all the most successful companies have a really powerful flywheel. And a flywheel is just a metaphor for a snowball. If you roll a snowball down a really long hill, it compounds on itself, it builds on itself. And I have this 5-pointed star flywheel that I teach all my business clients. And the first one is lead by example. It's do it yourself, DIY, do it yourself. The second one is share your experience, SYE, share your experience. And sharing your experiences on social media. So for us, we use Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We're on TikTok too, which apparently is going away in the US in the weekend, apparently. I don't know, maybe. But we'll see. But ultimately, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn are the main ones. And so you lead by example, you share your experience. So do it yourself, share your experience. The next one is generate sincere interest. And I say the word sincere on purpose because a lot of people are just trying to network. They're not actually sincerely interested. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So generate sincere interest, meaning they actually care about what you care about. They're not just pretending to berg off you or whatever. And berg means bask in reflected glory. It's the hey, my team won type of thing. It's called berging. It's a cognitive bias. But anyways, so do it yourself, share your experience, generate sincere interest. This is the podcast. This is where you talk about your passion, and other passionate people are there to listen, and then they reach out. Then the last two is, so do it yourself, share your experience, generate sincere interest. Build meaningful relationships, BMR. Build meaningful relationships. And this meaningful is the key word. I'm not talking to people about the weather. I'm not talking to people about things I'm not interested in. When people reach out on social media, I'm talking to them about health, wealth, life, and love. I'm talking to them about business. I'm talking to them about podcasting. And I'm trying to help them reach their goals in those things. That's build meaningful relationships. And then the last one, if you do the first four well of the flywheel, and you do them well and consistently, you have permission now to charge. And the 21st century is free to paid. I mean, Google, most people don't pay anything for Google. Right? So I used Gmail for 15 years before I ever spent any money at Google. But now when I have my own company, now we use Google Suite and I pay for YouTube Premium and blah, blah, blah. So the 21st century economy, you have to give away a ton for free long before you ever charge anything. And if you are against that, you're screwed, because that is the way. I still do a free trial. I've got 28 clients and I'm still doing a monthly free trial for 4 weeks for my business coaching. Like, because you feel the momentum, and the last thing you want to do is have it stop.
Sure.
So I believe in my coaching so much that I'll give 4 weeks away for free to the right person. By the way, I've vetted now who I can't do that with. So it's the right person. This is like cherry picked. Once per month I do this. And they feel so much momentum and so much results that they don't want to get rid of it. And so then you can charge. And you can charge something as simple as a product like the Dreamliner that we have here, which is a journal that we have, helps you reverse engineer your dreams, or my business coaching or podcast production or whatever it is. But if you don't do the first four, so the last one is do it for others. So do it for yourself, share your experience, generate sincere interest, build meaningful relationships with the right people, and then do it for others. And when you do it for others, you can charge. And that's how you build a company right there. I mean, now your brand gets bigger, more people, more demand, and then you're overwhelmed as hell like me.
You just made it so simple.
I know. It's that easy.
So the formula is simple. The execution of the formula is atrociously difficult.
Right? Yeah, especially while you're trying to run a business too. You know, if somebody's running a business and trying to do a podcast, it can be overwhelming at times.
Very much. I mean, I've been
absolutely
very overwhelmed. Yeah, like I said at the beginning of this, right? Is if you get into business, and a lot of people say, well, I want to get into business so I have more free time. It's the dumbest thing. I mean, there's no such thing, right? Unless you have generational wealth or big investors that are not smart, you can't start a business for more free time. Free time doesn't come until way later. Those are people in their 50s and 60s that have already done it, right?
Well, they've spent decades building it to where they can do whatever they want.
Exactly. And then their children are on TikTok with the lifestyle.
Yeah, showing it all off, aren't they?
Yeah, selling a course on how they did it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Well, Alan, as we wrap up here, it's been very insightful of
Sure.
everything that you've been saying, especially about podcasting. We do feel like a lot of people are like want to do it, but are discouraged by it. So I think this episode in particular helps clear up a lot of that. Cause like you said, you can start out simple with just a mic, Audacity, StreamYard for free, and just start making content, making your podcast. So definitely appreciate that, especially dispelling the needing of a production crew that I think some people are probably going to be like, oh, I need that.
If you want to do 7 episodes a week, you'll need a production team. If you want to start with 1 a week or 1 every other week or even 1 a month just to start small, everything starts small and builds. I mean, the accumulation of what I just shared in this 30 minutes, it was over the last 8 years. And even before that, I learned a ton too, right? So I'm not starting from scratch. And I think that that's one of the things that we really don't understand, particularly young people, is, I mean, no one knows what they're doing in their 20s. Let's be real. I'm 36 now. I look 15, I know. But like, I know more. I can do more with one hand tied behind my back than I could in my 20s. Because I just, through massive pain, suffering, and failure, I just learned what works and what doesn't work. I mean, even that formula that I just gave you, each one of those you can zoom into and do it wrong. So you start small, build, stay humble, keep the wrong people out of your circle, and get the right people in your corner, and then just be tenacious. Don't stop. Like, keep going, because, you know, a lot of these podcasters that stop, like most people stop their shows, where do those listeners go? Right? They're going to when Tony Robbins retires, which he will eventually, like, where do those listens go? Right. When Joe Rogan retires, where do those listeners go? They're going to be ready for someone else who wants to add value. And so add value, stay focused, stay consistent, play the long game, keep the wrong people out of your circle, and you can do it.
Well, while we wrap up, why don't you go ahead and plug your company, of what you do and how to contact you and whatnot, and sell yourself here so that we can hopefully drive some business your way.
I appreciate you. So nextleveluniverse.com is all things next level. It's spelled just like it sounds, nextleveluniverse.com. We got all kinds of free stuff. We have a monthly meetup we do every month. We have a book club we've been doing for 4 years. We've got a journal. If you're someone who wants to work on their own personal development, we've got something for you. If you're someone who wants to start a podcast, we definitely have something for you. And if you're someone who wants to generate revenue in your own business or start a business, personal brand, I'm your guy. My main focus this year is coaching, training, and podcasting. So if you have a podcast and you want a guest that can add value, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, reach out. And this is something that I've started saying, because the truth is I'm not for everyone, and I know that. If you're humble and grateful and you have a sincere interest to achieve and earn your way to external success and internal fulfillment, you're going to love me, you're going to love NLU, you're going to love Kev. We're tryhards who came from nothing, who didn't have dads, who just wanted to have an impact and had quarter-life crises that kind of brought us to that. If you're entitled on any level and you want big rewards for minimal effort, don't reach out under any circumstances, because you're going to hate me and you're not going to like us. And because we are tryhards, we don't believe in minimal effort for maximum results. I think that's stupid. I think it's fake, and I think it's perpetuated. And I think that if you really want to win in the real world, not just on social media, you're going to have to really grind to do it. And that's just the truth.
I agree.
With very few exceptions. So if you're a grinder and a grower, reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your insights and your honesty. Definitely appreciate it. Jared, you got anything?
No, thanks again for coming on, Alan. It was really insightful. I definitely learned some stuff from you, and I know I can take some stuff away from this, so I appreciate it.
Thank you both for doing what you do. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and reach out anytime, guys.
Same to you.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.